This is a Media Lab podcast. Dave, I think it's time for me to do a big thing with you here today. It's been leading up to this moment. I've taken all your advice to heart, and so I have to give you this.
Are these a pair of running shoes?
They are a pair of running shoes. I chained you to this machine, this desk for so very long, but it's time for you to run. It's time for you to get out there and enjoy your life.
So you're gonna cut the chain.
I'm gonna cut the chain.
Oh, sweet. All right, see ya. Podcast's over.
Oh wait, actually, we do still have to talk about this Julia Roberts movie. So just sit there. You know what? Let me just do up this chain one more time, and we'll see where this goes.
Oh man.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine.
Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I'm still Dave.
And I'm the Machine.
A podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse, although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. For whatever reason, the Machine really loves us talking about movies from 1999. Today is no different, because we're going to be watching the film Runaway Bride.
The bride is walking down the aisle. Maggie Carpenter is walking down the aisle. Seems very confident in her approach. She's at the first pew. The bride seems to be a bit hesitant. She's turning. She's turning in. Oh, she's running.
Where's she going?
Lock the door!
She likes to dump grooms right at the altar. Plows down the aisle, knocking old ladies out of her way like the running of the bulls in Pamplona.
I'm profoundly and irreversibly screwed up.
I have been accused of using this column to direct bitter diatribes at the opposite sex. I could.
This Runaway Bride story, I think we can sell it to GQ magazine.
The real story.
All the gory details. If she runs again, we got a cover story.
Shazam. I think I'm in Mayberry.
Dave, we did talk about Notting Hill already this year, so we have already discussed Julia Roberts. But do you have any history with Runaway Bride in any capacity?
No. Can I? No. I can say it again.
One more time?
No.
For a second there, I don't know if this will pick up in the podcast. I do hear an ambulance or something going by on your end. I did think it was your child for a second, like just screaming its head off. And I was like, oh, what's going on?
He was screaming because he heard us say Runaway Bride.
Hey, not that we've watched the movie yet,
right?
But he's not wrong.
Right.
I also have no history with this movie whatsoever, although, and again, not to spoil the podcast, I feel like I've been lied to because I thought I was told that this movie was good.
Who it's?
But not that we haven't seen the movie yet,
right.
So who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised on the goodness of this film.
If we watch it and we don't like it, we should find the person who told you they liked it and make them pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Make them watch it. All right. Well, maybe we can just rip off this Band-Aid. Why don't we do this? Let me go thank some sponsors. We'll watch the movie. And then when we return, we'll be talking about Runaway Bride.
Just keep those shoes close by.
Hey everyone, it's me, Kyle. It is so hot where I am right now. And the heat outside that is also heating the inside of my house is compounded because the machine offputs just a lot of heat energy as well. Like looking at it now, I probably should not have covered the entire outside of the robot with incandescent bulbs, but the march of progress is slow. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. I'm here to let you know about some of the people who make this show possible. First and foremost, I should let you know that Kyle and Dave versus the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode of Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is brought to you by World on Fire, a new podcast from CBC Edmonton. World on Fire is a new 5-part series that takes you to the front lines of out-of-control wildfires in Canada, Australia, and California. Recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic, hosts Adrian Lamb and Mike Flanagan look at what it takes to find hope in the midst of fear and destruction and how communities affected by wildfires rebuild. The series examines the high costs that wildfires cause to people's health, homes, and communities. Find World on Fire on the CBC Listen app or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find it online at cbc.ca/worldonfire. This week, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is also brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network. So let's go listen to one of the other great shows.
The podcast you're listening to is proud to be part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And so is mine. My name is Vanda, and I'm the host of Tight Ends Podcast. I don't know much about football, but I know a tight end when I see one. If you're looking for a sports podcast without all the stats and numbers and even facts and figures, join Tight Ends Podcast, the sports podcast for the rest of us. Every week we find out what's up with Gronk, and we always have a great tweet of the week so you can follow along. Go to albertapodcastnetwork.com to find more great podcasts like Tight Ends Podcast. And remember, clear eyes, tight ends can't lose.
Well, the person who told me this movie was good was definitely wrong.
Yeah, Jesus, fuck. Are we allowed to swear on this episode?
Yes, you again are the reason why this is an R-rated podcast, Dave. Again, sorry to spoil the review. I hated this movie a lot. And as someone who was a big fan of Notting Hill, I was looking forward to debating you and talking to you about why you're wrong about romantic comedies. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be an episode where we both rag on the movie for 25 minutes. So hopefully we can keep an element of fun throughout these proceedings.
I don't have a problem with romantic comedies. I have a problem with romantic comedies that are not romantic and not funny.
I mean, I personally love a stalker film every so often.
Christ.
All right, well, let's go through some of this. Let me push this button. The machine's just going to print out some information for us to read. Actually, it's a lot shorter than usual here. All right, so Runaway Bride was released July 30th of 1999. No other major releases were that week. Currently, it's rated 5.5 on IMDb, 39 on Metacritic, and then on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 87 critics' reviews, it's at 46%, and based on 437,978 user reviews, it's at 53%. So this is a rotten film by both metrics of Rotten Tomatoes. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just amazed that there are 53% of humans that would give it a higher than 50% rating.
Put it this way. Humanity is stupid. Most movies easily get a 6 out of 10. That's an average movie I find online. So when it's below that, you know it's bad. It is available on DVD and Blu-ray. You can buy it or rent it on iTunes or Google Play Movies. And in Canada, at least, you can stream it on Amazon Prime. Its budget, get ready to hold on to your hat. Its budget was $70 million.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I am guessing both Richard Gere and Julia Roberts got over half of that budget, is what I'm guessing.
So,
it has to be.
Sorry, how many dollars? $70?
$70 million. Just put that into perspective. When we have seen, I think anyways, I have to look back in our archives though. But when you see stuff like Office Space being made for $15 million and other stuff, it's how did you spend this money? I don't get it. Anyways, it was a big box office success, as you'll find out, because it opened to $35 million. It would go on to make a total of 152 domestically, 157 million internationally, bringing it to a grand total of $309 million.
What?
With inflation, $476 million is what this movie made. Julia Roberts was a box office draw back in the late 90s.
Fine.
Its plot description from IMDb is: a reporter is assigned to write a story about a woman who has left a string of fiancés at the altar. It stars Julia Roberts as Maggie Carpenter, Richard Gere as Ike Graham, Christopher Maloney as Coach Bob Kelly, and Joan Cusack as Peggy Fleming. So let me talk to you about some of those people. Joan Cusack was born October 11th, 1962. And if you go and listen to our Toy Story 2 episode, you can hear the rest of her bio because we talked about her on that episode. So that brings us to Christopher Maloney, who was born on April 2nd, 1961. He started on TV, doing guest spots and TV movies. His theatrical film debut was as Bodyguard Number 2 in 1994's Clean Slate, a Dana Carvey comedy. He'd go on to be in things such as 12 Monkeys, Bound, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. 1999 would not just be a big year for him because he was in Runaway Bride, but because he began starring in Law & Order SVU, that stands for Special Victims Unit.
Dum-dum.
This would be what made him famous for a bunch of people. He would stay on that series until 2011, so for 12 seasons. Weirdly, even though he was a fan favorite, he was only nominated for an Emmy once his entire tenure on that show, losing to Kiefer Sutherland on 24. In recent years, he's done a bunch of voice work in such things as Family Guy, Rick and Morty, and the new Harley Quinn series. Currently, he has no upcoming projects, although I will say editorially here, if you follow him on Twitter, he is a bonkers crazy man. So have fun doing that. Dave, the machine wants me to send you over some information, so it wants you to read out the rest of this.
All right, let's take a look here. Richard Gere, born August 31st, 1949.
I'm going to pause you right there, Dave. You'll notice that his birthday is in the year 1949. Which makes him 50 years old the year that this movie came out. I'm just going to say that for a payoff that's going to happen later in this episode.
I'll give him this much credit. He looked pretty good in this movie for a 50-year-old stalker. There's fucking disgusting. All right, let's keep going. His first credit was in the TV movie Chelsea DHO in 1973, but within a few years he'd be in such things as Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Days of Heaven, American Gigolo, An Officer and a Gentleman, as well as Breathless. It was probably An Officer and a Gentleman that really kickstarted his career. And then in 1990, he'd have the huge hit Pretty Woman, which had many of the same actors and creative team as this piece. Into the 2000s, Richard Gere's career would be pretty hit or miss. For every Primal Fear or Chicago, there was a Dr. T and the Women or Nights in Rodanthe. Are these actual movies?
Those are two actual movies, Dr. T and the Women, which was, of all things, a Robert Altman movie that just bombed and was not critically liked at all. And then Nights in Rodanthe is, I'm going to forget the woman, the actress. Anyways, it was a bad movie. I remember.
It sounds like garbage.
Yeah, it's a bad movie.
He was, you know what? There was that movie where he's like a corrupt finance something, and the daughter's, that was a pretty good movie. What was that daughter? Emma Roberts?
Is that Power?
Yeah, something. Anyways, that was pretty good, but who cares?
I can't remember. Yeah.
This movie wasn't. Spoiler alert. His last project was the TV miniseries Mother, Father, Son that came out last year. There are no upcoming projects. Oh, the machine's very curt. Julia Roberts, born...
Oh, God. One second. Let me...
You know what? Who gives a
so
shit?
Funny.
Julia Roberts, listen to our Notting Hill episode to hear her bio. This movie is written by Josanne McGibbon and Sarah Perriott. They are a writing team. They started writing on TV before transitioning to film with such things as Three Men and a Little Lady. That was the third one?
I think it's the third
Awful.
one. Yeah.
That actually makes sense. The Favor, and then this piece of shit. And then this movie. They've stayed on television after this movie came out with things like Desperate Housewives. That's actually not that surprising. And the Disney TV movie series Descendants.
But you like this, or your son likes Descendants?
Emerson loves Descendants. I think it's pretty watchable, although I kind of walk in and out of the room.
Right.
Yeah, but it's got, what's her face? As the first one's got the Maleficent is that Broadway singer. You might like her. The blonde one. She was in Glee for a bit as the drunken...
Oh, Kristen Chenoweth?
Yeah. Directed by Gary Marshall. Born November 13th, 1934.
Now, just before anyone calls nepotism, no relation to me, as far as I know.
Gary Marshall started his career writing and producing television. His first credit was for The Tonight Show when Jack Parr was hosting. This dude's old, man.
Yeah, Jack Parr, by the way, second host of The Tonight Show after Steve Allen.
He'd have a hand...
For those who care.
I didn't, but thank you for interjecting.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a second.
Sorry, I forget. Sometimes people don't realize that I was also born in 1930. And so I know all this stupid trivia.
Gary is actually Kyle's brother. He'd have a hand in writing scripts for The Lucy Show and then The Dick Van Dyke Show before hitting it big with a string of hits, The Odd Couple, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy. Those are actually seminal TV shows that probably
classic
do
shows
not hold up.
Yeah, unfortunately not. Actually, especially Happy Days, I think, it's almost unwatchable. The interesting thing about those last three shows, this is, again, something that only I care about. Do you know the line that connects Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy? No. Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy are spin-offs of Happy Days. Happy Days actually holds, I think it ties All in the Family with the amount of spin-offs there were from one TV show. Although I think All in the Family has the extra special thing of having a spin-off of a spin-off. So
who invited this guy?
All right, good.
So there you go. Fun facts all around here.
You have revealed yourself fully, Kyle, on this podcast.
Hey, I wear pants, okay?
I don't know. Oh, we're on Zoom, so there's no way to verify
Who knows?
that. Yeah. I mean, we're in the same room with the robot. And I just can't see your lower half.
Let's keep this fiction, this robust fiction that we have created amongst this audio program
method acting
of us in the same room.
His first theatrical film was Young Doctors in Love from 1982. That certainly didn't set the world on fire. Fuck. Sorry, that's just a funny line. I don't know why. But he'd have a string of hits in the 80s and 90s, such as The Flamingo Kid, Beaches, Pretty Woman, and Exit to Eden. His last big hit was The Princess Diaries and its sequel. He would continue directing into the late 2010s, having a trio of films named after holidays: Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, and Mother's Day. None of these are movies. Sorry, none of these were major.
These are greeting cards that he wrote and left behind.
None of these were major critical or box office hits. He would pass away on July 19th, 2016, at the age of 81.
Okay, well, I don't even know where to start with this, Dave. Why don't you take me through your thoughts about watching this movie? Not that we didn't sit beside each other while this happened, but thought process, how long did it take you to go through it? Let's open up this can of worms. What did you think about this movie?
Yeah, I mean, if it hasn't been made clear, I think this is one of the worst movies I've ever had to sit through. I mean, it's not the worst movie in a fun, intentional way. It's bad because there's no salvaging points. There's nothing good about any of it. The characters are shit. I mean, I don't know if I can comment on the acting. I don't know if they got anything to work with, or I don't know if it's their fault. The directing, I mean, even the directing was poor. Kyle, like the way this thing's pieced together is, I just can't. I hated everything.
I don't know how to say this without becoming like exceptionally mean, and that's not what my intention is. But
let it be your intention.
It feels like a TV movie, yes, in the worst possible way of that meaning. And I agree. There are certain cuts that happen in this. I'm just like, what happened? Like, is this like they only did like, I don't know, they had no coverage whatsoever, so like that's the only options that they had available. Like that's what it kind of feels like. I mean, as far as the acting goes, I actually don't think the acting in and of itself is bad. It's just like the material itself is bad. So I don't think that anyone, like even the lovely, like I love Laurie Metcalf, like adore Laurie Metcalf. I think she is one of America's best actresses, and is slept on a lot. Like she is so good. She tries so desperately to make her like two scenes work, and it just doesn't. Like she's trying so hard to make it be funny. Yeah,
that character is fucking awful. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like well,
I know, but it's like she's great. Like I know that actress is great, like, and she's trying, and it's like it's just no, like just stop. Like it's just not good.
It's incomprehensible. That it's. I'm just going back to $70 million. For $70 million, Kyle, you should have more footage and rewrites and like input from your actors. That none of this makes sense. I honestly, and this is the first time I was wrong about the gender of the writers. I honestly thought halfway through that this had to be written by a man, because Richard Gere's character is not like a psychopath, a fucking stalker. Like, he's so creepy, but you know he's going to win over this woman. It's just it's so like, I actually had a feeling of disgust. It was like my soul and my spirit were being sucked out of my body every minute that passed out of this movie. And then when they do the so-called romantic turn, it was like a psychotic thriller turned Stockholm syndrome. I don't even understand. I don't understand any of it. It's not romance. It's some fucking psycho and
well, that's what I mean. Like, again, this is, you can argue, I guess, a different time. And I sometimes hate when that gets thrown up here too much, but it's like, I don't get in what universe this does not come off as the biggest example of like what we now call like negging, like just throwing negativity at this person until they fall in love with you. And yeah, being a weird stalker, like walking into your place of work and not leaving, and then going to your home and not being immediately kicked out for no apparent reason from what I can see. In this character who is shown as nothing but an asshole the entire time he is on screen and in his profession. And then I guess I'm supposed to be rooting for him to like convert this woman to see the error of her ways because she's a woman, so she doesn't understand the way that the world works. Like, that's basically what the tone is. And I'm like, I don't get what is going on here. And why I wanted to make that statement of Richard Gere's birth, not to age shame anyone, but I was like halfway through this, like, wait, how old is Richard Gere right now? And I had to look it up. 50 years old. Julia Roberts was 33, I think, in 1999. Not that I don't suppose you can't fall in love with that age range, but it just comes off as like super predatory in this film. And maybe I should revisit Pretty Woman. Maybe the same thing is true of Pretty Woman, but it just feels gross the entire time.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like, just to counter that one point, it got a lot creepier where the age gap got maybe 10 or 15 years longer. And we were seeing so-called rom-coms where the male lead would be 50 and it would be a debutante, actress in her 20s. And it's fucking disgusting to watch because, casting could do better. I don't understand how Hollywood works for women.
You don't understand most things.
I know that's become, I won't say resolving, but certainly in the forefront in the last 5 or 6 years. But Christ, man, like, it's hard to comprehend what it must have been like. I mean, Weinstein, all that shit aside, even just if you could just be an actress, like, what was we finally watched La La Land, not to cross too much, but those sequences where Emma Stone is going through the auditions, I mean, it's like, I don't understand anything about an actor's life, but there's that one sort of meta scene. The first half of the movie's great. It drags way too long. Where she's in the room where everybody looks kind of like her, but as she comments like prettier and more of this. And that shit's weird, man. All of it's weird. How, it's such a male-centric world for two women, a woman writing team to play, unless, they're overpowered by the studio.
I mean, I do think that is the most shocking thing about this film when I uncovered this, because I, like you, thought has to have been written by some guy. Like, nope, these are two women who wrote this material. And thought, there's a couple different things, though, that kind of go through my mind, which is the first, I was not immediately, anti this movie when it started. Although by about 20 minutes in I was. But I mean, at the beginning, it actually had this really weird feeling. I guess we could call it a tone. It actually had a lot familiar to like 1940s comedies. Like, that's what I thought it was going to be going for. It then devolves into something completely different that I don't think follows through on like that kind of like setup and promise. But had they kept that tone, I think I would have been able to accept it maybe a little bit better if it was more of like a give and take where like it's the wisecracking dame and like the newspaper guy who's trying to get with her or something like that. I could have been on board with that. And then unfortunately it's like, no, we're saying this it is modern day. We're trying to make this modern to 1999, and it feels like it's so antiquated. And you can tell that it was a 60-year-old man who directed this movie.
As soon as you said that, all I could think about how much better it'd be in black and white with, like, I don't know, Spencer Tracy and Hepburn or something.
And Hepburn,
where they could like yell at each other, and you think it's fucking hilarious. And that stuff, aside from the blatant racism and whitewashing, could hold up as a narrative. So maybe, judging by how old all of these people are, that might have been in the back of their mind, and they just fucked it up. I don't know, but it was. It was so creepy, man. Like, I think about halfway through, not that I watched this movie with my wife beside me, but Helen looked at me like she kept trying to tell me to calm down because I was fucking livid, man.
Vibrating. It's like,
I have, this is the first movie probably in many weeks where I have vigorously typed notes and they don't even make sense. It's just venting of pure rage that this thing exists. You know what the crazy part?
Jesus fuck shit. That's what my note says. I don't know what this means.
At some point, it's just letters because I can't even type out the profanity quick enough. But I don't even understand setting this in small town USA. Like, that doesn't even play that well because, like, if you're in small town USA and you have this pariah of a woman that's been through all of these things, like, I don't even understand that dynamic in the town until they play up the idea that she's being made fun of, but that doesn't appear for the first hour of the movie until the like, why are they having a luau? Like, there's no thought process for any aspect. It's like they just fucking threw shit at a wall.
It really does feel like random scenes stitched together. Part of it too is that I read up a little bit on how this movie came to be, which was the studio originally wanted Pretty Woman to have a sequel.
I was just going to say, it's probably supposed to be Pretty Woman.
And Julia Roberts said, absolutely not, I'm not doing sequels. And so they said, okay, well, let's just get all the same people, same creative team, and make just an original concept. And I think that maybe they were just hampered by that, where it's just like, there's no real passion for this project. It's just like, we just want to work together again. I guess this script will be okay. Yeah, don't rewrite it. It's fine. We'll jump on here. We'll do this thing. And what happens is that it's just a bunch of random scenes, and there's no thought process put into it. So things that you could start to see at the beginning of the movie and pay them off just aren't. And so, like you said, like when we first meet the Julia Roberts character, she's like, I don't know, like she seems to be like so outgoing and
sweet,
like loved by everyone. And then apparently we're supposed to believe that actually no, everyone kind of like dismisses her and thinks she's like this big old joke. I don't see how this was seeded properly. And maybe that's a modern audience too, looking back at this and expecting more, but it's just like,
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't know. It feels weird. The whole movie just feels weird. And can I just say, there are 4 montages in this movie. There is 4 goddamn montages in this movie. I'm just like, A, it's not the 80s anymore, boys. Like, we can't do this. And B, 2 at the most. Like, you cannot. Even the Rocky movies only had 1 or 2 montages. Like, you cannot do this.
I think every movie should be a montage.
One of my pet peeves is when they show home videos that are clearly put together by a film team.
Yeah.
And
100%. Like great big cameras.
Yeah, this
and,
is
different angles. And everything.
Like how many? This is supposed to be shot by a bellhop in a fucking like small town hotel, and it's got multiple cameras. That part where she's running away, and they've got a camera stitched to her ass because it's showing the trail as the kid's being dragged behind her. I hate that stuff. Like, it's frustrating. I know that was a bit of a trope in this era where like you have a so-called Hollywood director. Who's going to direct a mini movie inside. They can't go home video on that shit, right? They got to still show their craft. I mean, not that I was into the narrative, but what a break. Like why do they have 3 weddings on one VHS tape? And it's only the part where she runs and they've got title sequence. Like the whole thing is so contrived. The other pet peeve I have, which maybe is just a cultural thing. I don't understand the concept of ex-couples being friends and touching each other. Like the idea that his ex-wife, is that Rita Wilson? Anyways, his ex-wife is...
It was. I thought it is. It's Miss Tom Hanks, but yeah, Rita
Wilson. It's kind of weird, right? Like, anyway, so
Yeah,
she's his boss.
I can't say that I've seen it happen a lot in real life. I have heard that it can happen.
Well,
I don't think ever to the degree that you see it in this movie. Maybe if there was kids involved, you could have that relationship still be there.
I don't mean like you have to be fire and brimstone. I mean, that does happen too, and that's unfortunate. But, the idea that you are in a workplace, you work for your ex-wife who's now married to your best friend who's the photographer. They decide they're going to save your career even though they had to fire you. And then when you have your emotional sort of cathartic moment, you go to their fucking house and you start touching and rubbing each other's faces while you what the
weird.
Fuck was going on?
Well, that's
there?
the thing too. It's like if there was ever Exhibit A, and I know people are going to call me like this beta soy boy cuck for saying this, but
I don't even know what any of those words mean. But go on.
Well, look it up because my picture is beside it. It's that like old white male privilege to like the exmo degree. It's like you like are fired or you get quote unquote canceled, but still excel at your next thing. Like there is no real consequences for anything that the Richard Gere character does. Yes, he loses his job, but gets this prime like opportunity to go to this small town and like write a book and save his career. He makes out with another man's fiance. And quite rightfully, Christopher Maloney punches him in the face. I'm like, how am I supposed to think Christopher Maloney is a bad guy in this situation? And still gets to end up marrying her. He yells at this and browbeats this woman who then comes to him in New York and is like, here's my running shoes. You were right the entire time. Like, what is going on? Like, it's like, it is the prime example of for me, it feels like it's like boys will be boys, right? Can't blame them too much. It's like, this does not feel like a real human being that is in this movie. I
got the sense, and it'll be a good thing that this podcast will never be big enough that this woman writing team will actually hear this and comment on it. But by the end of the movie, I had what a fucking strong word. But at the end of this piece of shit, I had these two thoughts. Number one, is this the type of relationship and depiction of quote unquote romance that makes 50 Shades of Grey so popular? And B, how much of this is just residual bitterness of shitty relationships these people have been in? I mean, the scrambled egg shit, like what the, living for others, like it's just the stupidest.
I mean, again,
I don't understand.
That's a concept and that's a plot thread that I feel could have had some sort of thematic point. But I really feel that this movie doesn't care about any thematic point. It's trying to be funny and romantic. And I just personally feel it's neither of those things.
I didn't laugh once.
So it's like,
I didn't give a shit about them getting together. I will say, like, I've never been a big Julia Roberts fan, but having watched these two movies, regardless of my opinions of both of them being pieces of shit, she is, charming. Like, there are moments in this movie where she'll just play a piece where you're like, she actually does seem likable. I don't want to punch my TV in the face, but
I was going to say the exact same thing. Actually, it's like for all the faults of this movie, at the very least, I get why Julia Roberts was a star. Like she shines throughout this entire movie and is, I think, likable and everything that Richard Gere is not. I don't want to hog all the time here, but can you explain to me why Richard Gere? Like, what is?
I don't know.
I don't get his whole deal. Maybe it's because I'm a weirdo and never found him attractive in the first place, even young Richard Gere. And I don't think he's this amazing actor.
He plays the same character.
I just don't get it. Like, what is it about Richard Gere that made him have a career for so long? I know that's mean. That's a super mean comment, but I just don't get it.
No, I don't think it's mean. I mean, I think these things are valid questions. It's like the idea, which is also a valid sort of observation, I think, that there's Hollywood good looking and there's TV good looking, and they somehow do not intersect, even though if we think of, let's say, beauty as a concept, that shouldn't be the case, but there's just something, and maybe it's Julia Roberts' case, like maybe you need to have a certain type of charisma or something. I don't actually understand it. It's intuitive, but Richard Gere, I suspect, plays to, I mean, I don't want to overplay this with the James Dean sort of thing, but I think he has a cruel face, man. And
a cruel face. All right.
I mean, it's the first half of the movie is where I could not pick up on anything he was doing. He looks like a sociopath. There's something wrong with him. And then I think particularly in that era, I think, this male role identity, even for how women are told they're supposed to like men. I think he plays this thing, cold, calculating. He'll soften up when he needs to, right? Like he'll go punch a dude in the face, but then he'll bring you flowers. He has that sort of that energy. And I don't know if this is a generational thing that we've gone beyond that, where we need, at least I need to see a little bit more human depth, so you don't look like a sociopath. But
I just need strong pecs and a six pack.
Officer and Gentleman, he could do a lot of push-ups. You know?
He could. I mean, I did some research while we were watching this movie together, and I cannot look at this movie without feeling that it's reeking of a publicist and, I don't know, some sort of like promotion. Richard Gere in 1999 won the People's Most Sexiest Man Alive award. I have to imagine that this was part of it. The marketing to this movie was him winning that award so people would go and watch this movie for some reason. That's what it feels like to me. The People's Sexiest Man Alive is a bullshit title that your publicist pays to get done. Like, I get that. Because I've never been asked to vote on it.
Are you suggesting, Kyle Marshall, that the winner of the sexiest humans is not what it seems? I mean, it is in it is in print. It is in print.
Yeah, listen, Dave, I'm just asking for a return to ethics in Sexiest Man Alive journalism. That's all I'm looking for.
You know, with the power of the internet, you could probably democratize that, but you probably don't want to.
Yeah. I don't want to, no.
If there's any good use of Facebook, it would probably be that.
Oh, I do want to call it some of the music cues that happen in this movie, because some of it does bring me back, but we have U2 in there.
Yeah, it's starting.
Which is
it's great that they use very literal lyrics for each of the sequences, just so that you could understand what was happening.
And then, of course, he whistles the theme song to the Andy Griffith Show, which, I mean, Mr. Marshall did not write for that show, but might as well have, because it's a reference that probably people in the 90s didn't even know. Also, I still don't get, I don't know if it's just a comment on the small town being like out of touch, but the bellhop puts on a Virtual Boy.
Yeah, what the heck was that?
To play games. The Virtual Boy stopped production in 1996.
Oh.
So I don't get it. I think that has to be what the comment is. Like, they're so backwards, they still think this is modern technology.
I saw it and I was like, this kid's from the future, because that's what we're trying to develop right now.
Now.
Right? How creepy was the top? Well, why did they put in the topless photo piece where he won't give her, he's commenting on her breasts, right? When he's like, what the fuck was that, Kyle?
What is going on?
And then he has got this diabolical smile on his face where he's like leveraging this photograph against a presumably defenseless woman for more information to destroy her public reputation. And she concedes. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's there's nothing that Richard Gere does in this movie that is really ever perceived by the movie as wrong. Like, he's always shown in the right, or he's put upon, but it's like, there's no like coming to a realization. It's all like, no, it's not me who's wrong, it's everybody else who's wrong, so come up to my level. And it's like, I think you're an asshole though, so I don't know.
Richard Gere reminds me of me. There's nothing to improve.
Were there such things as male columns in national published newspapers? Like, were there op-ed pieces where a man would be like, women are all shit? Or, because I always thought that was a magazine thing, but
maybe there was. Here's where I kind of come down on it, which is like the whole like setup of this movie is stupid. Even if he did make up every single line that he put into that column, he's a columnist. He's not a journalist. So it doesn't matter if he makes it up. The people that are in the opinion columns or the opinion pages are not held to the same journalistic integrity. And he's ready for fucking whatever
USA
it is, like USA Today. Who fucking cares? Sorry for my language, but it's like,
it's not the New York Times.
It's not the New York Times. It's an opinion piece. It's like, well, you know, you can't lie in your. It's like, I'm not writing hard journalism. He's literally writing a puff piece. It does not matter. Anyways, that was me. Like, not even. I was not even accepting of the premise of the movie.
He's got that stupid line, like, journalism is literature in a hurry. Like, I don't know. Everything about this thing, the Miles Davis thing. What the fuck, man? Like, where did that come from?
I think that That was him just being able to, he just wants to play guitar in a movie, I think is what that is.
It was just so pretentious. I mean, you got U2 to start the movie, but then his redeeming qualities in New Yorker is that he cares about Miles Davis. I think it's on a cassette tape. Like,
I have, I know we keep mentioning this, but we did watch this together. Did you stick around for the entire credits?
No, I turned it off.
Or did you turn it off?
When they started doing all of the scenes, I was like, no, I can't. I need to.
Did you know that after it goes to black and the credits come on, that there is an after credit sequence in this movie?
Okay. Are you gonna?
Can I describe it to you?
Please. I'm ready.
It's completely not worth your time, so don't go and do it. It's like 30 seconds. It's again like a little music underscore, a little bit in like slow motion of them throwing snowballs at each other.
For fuck's sake.
That's,
you know,
and it wanted me to run and rip my hair out. What little hair I have left.
Even the concluding cutscene of them making out on the balcony. I mean, what a poor soul that he got fired and he's got this multi-million-dollar fucking loft in Central Park.
Exactly, yeah.
But then this weird spinning camera cutscene of them getting married and then still on the balcony. Like, what? Why is that?
I don't even understand the last 30 minutes. I really don't. Like, I couldn't even track what was going on. It's like she runs away, he goes back to New York, and then she comes back. Why? And says, like, you were right the entire time. Here's my running shoes. Let's get married. I don't understand any motivation that's going on at this point.
The lamps were so ugly and they would not sell in New York. Now I'm being petty, but the other thing that frustrates me in principle, but is definitely in reflection in this movie, the wedding dress scene. And I think one of the premises of this, like the psychoanalytic problems with this as a pair of women writing this, is the white wedding dress mythology in America. This idea that your life is complete if you can put on this fucking dress. Life does not end at a wedding ceremony. It's like the beginning of a fucking relationship. But the whole thing, like that scene where she's going to buy $1,000 dress and then that woman's like, you know, you shouldn't. And then Richard Gere becomes this, like, and then she does this whole thing about how, like at the end, right? Like, oh, well, I don't want a big crowd. I don't want to wear this dress. And then what do? They've got her in a dress with a big fucking crowd. Like, I mean, albeit they're at the bottom of a hill.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I think part of the reason of my own baggage coming into watching this film, and not to get too real on you here, Dave, although before we started recording, I kind of hit you to this a little bit. I think part of the reason why I was so against this movie is that I got really, as I laugh, so I've been going through this like deep depression the last few days, and part of that got tipped into it was just like, you know, my sad sack self is like, I'm never going to be loved and no one's going to ever love me because I'm unlovable. And I watched this movie and it's like, fuck you, Richard Gere. Like, I hated it. I hated it so much because it's just like, this guy gets everything that he wants. And I'm here moping on the couch. You stupid movie.
Speaking of psychoanalysis,
yeah, I mean, that's totally me, like, projecting a lot onto this movie that's not there, maybe. But
I've just put these ink blots on this piece of paper. Tell me what you see.
That's Richard Gere giving me the finger.
The one-eyed snake. That scene was fucking weird too, man.
And like, how about the stupid, like, father being an alcoholic that doesn't ever get resolved or talked about ever again?
Man? Like, yeah, well, let's just leave it as at what the fuck. Why that's even in there? It doesn't play into any part of the character development. They just, and this is the thing about, I don't know if it's these two women or rewrites by some unnamed, editing party, or if it's Gary Marshall or whoever the fuck it is. But there are so many weird little depressing pieces that they sneak in here. Even like how Bob, what's the actor's name? But anyways, the current
Christopher Maloney
starts off as this sort of benign, silly PE teacher, and then he turns into this like creepy, controlling, like, oh, you just visualize it and you fucking do this and I'm gonna fucking tell you how to live your life. Like, what the hell was that? Like,
I thought that was really hot.
That's some personal shit coming through writing, right? Like, that's some bitterness for a relationship that died somewhere like 20 years before this movie was written. It was creepy. Everything about this movie was so creepy.
By the way, you're holding up your phone, and I'm really enjoying the stickers that are on the back of your Apple iPhone TM.
Emerson's my stylist. If he had them, this would be bedazzled. Anyways, Helen brought up, and this is how you know this movie is fucking terrible. at the end, she asked me, like, why can't they just have a relationship? Why does this whole idea of this movie...
Right. Like, why do they have to get married? Like, they don't know each other. Like, I don't know. Again, maybe that's the whole, like, Western perception of love and
weddings.
It's dumb. It's so hackneyed.
We're done here.
All right. Well, the machine has told us that we have to wrap this up because we've been raging at this movie.
Fire.
I mean, it's told us to wrap this up, but let's ask those two questions that we often ask. A, do you feel that this movie has any cultural relevance?
In negation.
And do you think this movie? Yeah. And do you think this movie could be remade today?
Not as is. No. And it doesn't. I mean, it has cultural relevance in that it reflects everything wrong with culture. But it should be strict. I mean, how this movie is streamable and so many. Not that we know what's coming next, but there are so many good movies that are not. I mean, I know there are production studios, and Julia Roberts still has great, credibility in the Hollywood sphere. But Christ, Kyle, like this is a movie that should not exist. Period. It should have been burnt.
Yeah, there's currently, and not that I normally actually agree with this, but there are so many, because of the Black Lives Matter movement and because people don't know how to express their feelings properly, there are so many movies and TV episodes that are getting removed from streaming services here recently. This is the one I would actually appreciate if they did. You just remove it. We can strike this from the record. We don't need to watch this movie ever again.
Just to be ultimately unfair, because this is definitely a sign of times, but there's one minority character and he's playing a chest spoon thing in the background of a fucking, porch blues band. I mean, how racially fucking insensitive is that shit? Right? It's...
Now who's the soy boy beta
Oh
cuck?
my God.
The same.
That was shocking. And I know that's not fair because we're in a different era right now, but I mean, it's on display right there. That's... why even include it?
Right. So we're not going to do any trivia because who cares? And we're going to go straight to our ratings. Dave, what would you give this movie out of 5?
What's the lowest? 0.5?
0.5 is the lowest.
I'm going to go 0.5.
Okay. I am only giving it slightly marginally, but I have to say, through this conversation, I actually changed my mind. I was actually going to give it the slight benefit of the doubt just for Julia Roberts' magnetism, but I can't. I'm giving this a 1. Which means that it is going to right pretty much near the bottom here for us, although it is tied with a Message in a Bottle. So do you think this is better or worse than Message in a Bottle?
Oh, man. Do we have to make a choice?
I know
can
we
just burn them both? You know what? I'll put this above Message in a Bottle for 2 reasons. One, Julia Roberts, even though the character doesn't make any sense, the movie's fucking terrible and it should never exist. And number 2, it was... 30 minutes shorter?
Yeah, almost, I think, 35 minutes shorter. But
so we'll give it credit for that because Message in a Bottle.
I will
wouldn't.
I will literally always treasure the moment we were watching Message in a Bottle, not because of the movie, because it's awful, but us both being like, there's an hour and a half more to this movie, and being so incredulous that there could be an hour and a half more of that movie yet to go. Well, anyway, so that's Runaway Bride, everybody. Have fun, folks. By the way, if you want to see our whole list, you can go to our Letterboxd page, which is in the show notes for you to go to. But letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. KDVSTM is also our social media handle, so you can find us on Twitter and on Instagram. And because I haven't talked about it for a while, you can also send us emails at kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com if you want to send us some lovely notes. I will say, talking about that, I did get a message here recently that I will read out now from our recent episode on South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, where me and Dave yelled at each other and then made up at the end. So Anonymous writes in and says, "That was your best pod yet. You and Dave really pushed the conversation to the purpose of films like this. Creative intention and its connection to the time period is where I think your pod shines. I loved it." So, if you want to put in there, whether it's positive or negative, Kyle and Dave vs. The Machine at gmail.com.
Tell us we're wrong about Runaway Bride. I dare you.
Yeah, if there are people like, you are you pieces of shit. You don't know anything about romantic comedies. Let us know. You can send us a message and let us know what we got wrong. Dave, let's push this button and see what we are going to be reviewing next week. A movie that I actually have never seen before. Mystery Men is what we're going to be talking about next week. Have you seen Mystery Men?
I used to own it. You've never watched Mystery Men?
No, I somehow escaped. And being like the big comic book fan I am, I'm surprised I never watched it.
Not just comic book. It's Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo, Hank Azaria, William H. Macy. I mean,
yeah,
Kyle.
it's also like every alt comedian has a cameo apparently.
Cameo nothing. They star in this
every
movie.
90s, yeah, every 90s alt comedy or comedian is either a star or shows up somewhere in that movie.
This is why I feel like, I mean, we'll see if it holds up. I feel like this movie was tailor-made for you. No, I used to own it. I don't know why I don't have it anymore. I can't believe that Runaway Bride is streamable, and we will find out that this is not.
It is not. You can rent it if you want to, but yeah, you can't find it in most places.
But I'm hoping this holds out because this used to be a big movie for me. I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm excited. Finally, we get away from this trash robot.
I hate everything about you.
Well, yeah, you take a seat. Weirdly enough, I think these shoes actually fit my feet.
Fuck, I knew it.
Do we have the same size feet?
They look big, to be honest with you.
You know, you stay here. You talk to the machine for a bit. I'm just going to do a little jog around the block.
I knew it.
It's fine. Just stay here. I'm never coming back.